Policy advisory for Government of India on comprehensive handloom cluster development. For a state horticulture cooperative developed a plan to improve profitability. He has participated as a keynote speaker, panelist in several conferences organized by institutions such as FICCI, Textile, EPC, Cotton USA, among others. He has also spoken in forums organized by institutes such as IIM Bangalore, Jain Institute on the invitation. He founded COSA, which is a technology platform that provides authentication, supply chain traceability, and branding solutions for the craft sector. COSA has developed innovative technology leveraging IoT, AI, and cloud computing to support the craft sector. The interesting part is he practices minimalism and he is a barefoot marathon runner. So nice to see your CV, sir. Thank you very much. This company, this COSA Designs, I came to know this company just 15, 20 days ago. An article appeared in the Deccan Herald newspaper in Bangalore edition, wherein fascinating write-up I could see about this company and award-winning company for the innovative award award given by the government of Karnataka. So I immediately approached Vijay Krishnappa sir, and he was kind enough to accept our invitation. So on behalf of the FDP organizing team, ABBS, I welcome Mr. Vijay Krishnappa sir to commence his presentation, his session on technology adoption in handloom fabric certification. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sengutuvelu, sir. And it's a privilege to address such an accomplished set of professors and teachers. So I'm sure this session, more than about my company, it will be a great learning experience for us as well. And happy to share our journey so far. And yeah, that could at least help some of you in some way. That will be a big accomplishment for us. So let me stop by sharing my screen. So anytime you are not able to hear or not able to see the screen, let me know so that. Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
So yeah, so the session today is the technology adoption in handloom sector. Primarily, to begin with, I would like to just brief about why handloom sector and why technology, because I am not a technologist by academics or any other way, or I am not related to handloom sector per se. To begin with, how I came to know about handloom sector is that, while advising the government of Ministry of Textiles, basically government of India, I was where we were advising, how to improve the economy of a handloom cluster in Banaras. So that's when, first time I got exposed. So I thought, let me first understand what handloom sector means, how these things work. So it was like went to Banaras in one of the kind of early mornings. I went to a village where I was passing by a small road, a narrow gully, you can call it. So on both sides, I could see the houses and the noise of tuck, 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 the weaving sound was coming. So then what happened is suddenly me along with couple of my colleagues, we were traveling through these gullies for study. And one of the guy, kind of pulled me into their house suddenly. It was a kind of a sudden movement. I was shocked to see, I asked him, why, what happened? He said, sir, whatever in the end of this road, the house you see, that is the house belongs to a master weaver. Okay, if he sees me talking to you, he will scold me, sir. So that's why, I had to do that. So I was wondering, what is there? And then my suddenly, I looked at the loom, which was it's a small house, very not much of space, but within that house there was one loom where a sari was being woven, and this sari was really, really beautiful. Means not just it was a kind of red sari, but there were not just him, but there were three people. There were two kids, and this guy was sitting in the middle, and he was weaving. So three of them have to really weave this. And later I understood this sari would cost anywhere between, it's called a Kaduva technique, silk sari, which would cost anywhere around 30,000 to 40,000. So it's a luxury product. So on one hand, he was weaving a luxury product, but his own life was far from luxury. Forget luxury, even basic amenities were missing. Not enough space for anything in that house. So at that moment, I found, okay, there is something wrong with this sector. This is such a prestigious product, such an important product, and people really cherish that kind of saris. But I don't know what's wrong with why Weaver is not able to meet ends with this kind of skill. So with that, my journey started with handlooms, and I kind of advised. We tried working with government in a couple of clusters, but at some point of time, I thought, I think it needs a different setup. We need kind of may not be the government may not be the agency which has the capability, but it needs some kind of private participation as well. With that intention, we found that there are issues. We started as a team, looking into what are the different issues which are being kind of the craft sector is facing. Okay, so coming to why this sector is very important to India as a nation, is that it is kind of in handicrafts as well as handlooms is a very rich heritage, and there are over 1,000 clusters, more than 1,000 clusters making specific handi, which are very unique to India, unique to some of this local what you call culture, and in terms of local practices. So there are over thousands such clusters, and there are about 9 million weavers as well as artisans who are involved into some way of making by creating by hand. So this is like a supply side. So supply side, there is a huge supply of these products. There are more number of and these are primarily situated in rural area. So where today the challenge is that creating rural jobs is not so easy. With agriculture is becoming ever challenging. So I mean, on one hand, you have that 9 million weavers and artisans who have some hand skill available. Okay, and on the demand side, if you say look at globally, the handmade market is growing. Okay, so the total handmade market is estimated to be around $400 billion dollars. Okay, and if you see, even in the last say 7 to 8 years, globally, there are like website, for example, Etsy.com is one of the marketplaces for handmade products. Etsy is a US based marketplace, but still it is witnessing a growth of double digit, more than around 50% year on year, even during the economics, the bad years of 2007, it has witnessed growth. So this is the kind of, in terms of demand side, there has been a demand for curated handmade products across the globe, not just in India. Okay, so and such was this Etsy's growth. Amazon had to come up with its own micro website called Amazon Handmade. Amazon Handmade sells only the products which are made by hand. Okay, so there is a demand. I mean, Amazon wouldn't venture into something which is handmade unless there is a demand. So globally there is a demand. One, in terms of tourism and gifting. The second is consumption of sustainable products is ever growing. People don't mind spending more money on the sustainable products. And the third thing is, people are becoming more sensitive towards to environment, more sensitive towards community. So they are looking for ethical products, fair trade products and social commerce, means which can help society. So these are some of the, I mean, global trends which are, what do you call, which shows that there is a demand for handmade products. However, the sector still continue to face challenges despite. And I mean, again, coming to India, this, for example, take handlooms. Now, around between 90 to 95% of global handlooms are in India. Okay, not that it is what do you call that? It's they survived just like that. So it is the art. It is some of this culture which has kind of made this survive. And most important thing is India was one of the first countries to mechanize fabric production. So India's power loom journey started in the early 19th century, and we were one of the first countries in the world to adopt this new technology. Where today the whole Bombay is kind of built on the mills, right? The mills, which were weaving, spinning. So this whole thing, industrialization started from there. But in spite of rapid growth in industrialization of cloth manufacturing, the handlooms have sustained for over a century now. Okay, so there are many other reasons which led to this survival of handlooms. However, there are with challenges. So when we wanted, when to explain this, I would like to maybe talk about a theory which is called lemon theory. Economist, his name is George Akerlof, has come out with a simple lemon theory for which he has won the Nobel Prize. So there is a connection with the handloom sector. Before that, I would like to put this theory. So in this case, the way George Akerlof talks about lemons means the product which are not are substandard products, I would call it. Whereas cherries are something which are very good quality products. So let's take an example of a car sector. I mean, okay, before going this, are there any questions so that, it becomes a kind of, dialogue rather than a monologue? Anyone having any questions? Okay, so can I carry on? Yeah. I mean, my request is that we can have a dialogue. That will be much more helpful even for us, so that something new can come up, rather than me giving whatever we have done so far. I always appreciate more questions. Any questions at that simultaneously can be asked. So I might not have the screen, what do you call, things. Maybe you'll have to unmute and talk yourself. Okay, so let me continue.
Sir, just a quick question, sir, Mr. Vijay Krishnappa, sir.
Yes.
So you did
Good name,
mention,
sir?
my name is Shankar, sir. Shankar.
Yes.
I work in the training domain into Internet of Things. I just had a question here. Did you mean to say, I mean, there is not yet an alternative machine to handloom in the textile industry? Is that what you're referring to, or are there any?
Yes. It's a very good question. See, when I said, why handlooms have survived is because there are very specific weaves which India has. Okay, so it's not that all the handlooms survive. There were some, for example, something which is plain weaving can be done by both handloom as well as power loom. So many of that kind of got migrated to this one. But I was giving, like, for example, something called Kadua, which is made in Banaras, which has to be handmade component. And some of these products can also be made in power loom, but it will not be cost effective. It will not be worthwhile to make in a power loom. So that's the reason handlooms, making in some of these products in handlooms proved to be cheaper compared to power loom, and better to do because there is a power consumption and all this. Would that answer your question, Mr. Shankar?
Yes, sir. Yes, partly, sir. But I was just saying because I mean, in terms of when you say not good, is it in terms of precision or is it in terms of any other metrics or parameters that you're referring to?
Yeah, quality, for example, fabric quality.
Okay.
First is, in terms of economics, making some of these products may not be economical by making it in power loom. So if its economics is not supporting, there's no point in making in power loom. The second aspect of it is the quality itself. For example, some of the finer yarns are difficult to be handled by a machine,
Okay.
whereas by hand it is easy to handle. So both quality wise as well as from economics wise, some of the products it is worth making in handlooms than in power looms.
Okay, sir. Because I just had come across an article recently, sir. Because I mean, how robotics was, basically integrated with the domain of puppetry recently in the state of Tamil Nadu to revive an art. So
Okay.
I was just wondering, could robotics, improve the technology employed in handlooms? Just a question, sir. Just a
Yeah,
question.
yeah, sure, sure. I
Could
mean, could
could that
be.
could
I
that
mean, definitely.
yeah could that
So
help?
yeah, yeah. So in terms of technology, handlooms, it's not that today we have a what do you call electronic jacquard mechanisms which have come into handlooms.
Yes,
So
sir.
like pneumatic jacquard, for example, to reduce the drudgery. So there is a kind of some of these technologies have already come into the handlooms. Yeah, but as I told you, some of these products are better made in handlooms, and there are environmental reasons also for the sustainable. I mean, it is fabrics made in a handloom is much more sustainable than a product made in power loom. That's one of the reasons.
Okay, sir. I mean, you would be
Sir,
referring to
can
like
I add a
standardization
point to
factors.
that?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Sir, I'm Dr. Rajeshwari.
Yeah.
So one more thing, this financial inclusions and socialization of economic equity also one of the reason. And the other reason, handmade, which is the part of the word itself, handmade, which cannot be migrated to the nation. Other thing, all the self-help group and microfinance or micro entrepreneurs who gets lot of employment as a cottage industry, so
Right.
which helps the the poverty line or those who wants to start a micro level business, which improves the nation economy as well as the individual per capita income also.
Yeah, ma'am. I mean, beautifully kind of said. Yeah, it helps it has a social angle to it, environmental angle to it, and
Yes.
even yeah. So, for example, setting up a power loom is simple. It's more expensive than setting up a hand loom. Okay,
Yeah,
so
sure.
yeah, and there are minimum economies of scale. You need to
The
have
fixed
good
cost which becomes
fixed cost.
zero when we make a cottage industry production, and other thing economics of scale which reduces the fixed cost when you make it as a cottage industry and
Right.
giving a employment rather than getting a people getting a labor. We know the basic microfinance concept also. So that is the
True.
because my PhD is in handicraft industry.
Wow.
That's why I thought of adding
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So
Thank
happy to connect with you, and yeah,
you.
we'll
Sure.
Hello,
probably
sir.
learn more about this.
Can I add a few points? I'm Malakshmi Danda, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I'm an experimental researcher. I didn't have any PhD, but I did my BE in EC and MTech Computer Science, sir. So the same, the way I get moved whenever people with poverty and all. So I have various thoughts for improving. Like I'm more concerned for increasing the marginal capital of the India GDP rate. No, more interested for using the technology, whatever the skills I have learned to for the needy people and to raise the income of our country. First of all, in that various sectors, I have gone for the first use case. I'm researching on to improve the marginal price of a farmer, needy farmer, and also for the handloom sector. I usually go for promoting this, not wherever the exhibitions are there, where from various states, all the people they come up and they exhibit their products, all handmade. Especially in our place, even in Hyderabad, I used to go any exhibitions are there. like Dwakra Bazaar, where a poor woman, like they get the loans and they do the handmade products, and also from various states they come. I usually ensure that I buy only there for the Pongal shopping or whatever the shopping there, and also I promote my relatives, my friends by showing that like this is the best product instead of going for like the other big malls. Let us help the needy people. So this is how I thought like promoting the handmade products, whatever the interest is, gifting to people like on birthdays or anything. Recently on my daughter's birthday also I have given Kondapalli Bommalu, like the toys, the handmade things. Yeah, these are the things like I go search for, and also I see the people who are very poor and they have no openings. I go and promote, go there, go to the stall, this is very best. So this is how I'm a single individual I'm able to do. And like whenever I can touch base with the people with similar qualities, we can improve our handmade products and help India to be a big superpower, sir. This is my point.
So thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing such a noble thought. I think, yeah, as a community thinking, we should think, very individualistic. From individualistic to community thinking is very, very important. And yeah, I think, we have both buying power as well as selling power. So all that we have to do is create a market which can enable this, really unlock the potential of the sector. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, coming to now the theory part of it, say in like George Akerlof mentions, takes a case of a second-hand car market. Okay, so if there is a user, or rather a seller comes to the market. Okay, in most of the cases, the owner knows more about the car than anybody else. Okay, because it's not a very transparent thing. Like I had my old car, which when I was trying to sell it, I knew that it had a unique problem wherein the AC used to stop after, say, 20 to 30 minutes of running it. Okay, so anybody who wants to come and say take a test drive or test it, he will not do it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. He will not run an AC. So you will tend to not discover those issues. So, but I would know that. Okay, so similarly, when a car seller, second-hand car market, when he comes, say for example, a good driver is there, he has maintained his car very well, and it is worth say 100 rupees. Okay, so now whereas another guy is there who knows that, hey, this car market, I have to sell my car is very bad, like it is worth only 50 rupees. Okay, but he will come to the market. Now, as a buyer, when I go into the market, I cannot easily make out which is good or which is bad, right? So I would say that I will go with a sense of saying that I don't think I should pay more than 75 rupees. Both of them will claim, hey, my car is worth 100 rupees. And you will say that, I really don't know what is inside, but I can only pay 75 rupees to you guys. So average of both. So this, what happens is the guy who's got a good car like Cherries, what they call it, he will find that, hey, this market is not working for me. I will go out of the market. Okay. Whereas the guys like who has bad cars, they say that, hey, my car is worth 50 rupees, but I got 75 rupees. I will come and sell my car as well. So everybody, so there will be more lemons than cherries in the marketplace. So eventually the average price also keeps coming down. So if you go for a second market, you will ask for throwaway price. Now you will ask, hey, this is worth maybe 50 rupees. So as the market failure increases, or it depletes market opportunity, the price will come down. And a genuine good car sellers will say that, hey, I will keep my car as a second car, or I will give it to my friends at a lower price than giving it to some unknown fellow at a throwaway price. So all this will happen. So eventually market fails. Okay, and that is the reason. And with that concept only, if you see, Maybe 20, 30 years back, there was no Maruti True Value or Maruti, any of these cars. And today, every car, including Mercedes-Benz, has their own second-hand car sales businesses. Why? Because they have information. They can accurately see whether things are this car is worth or not. So here, the first thing is asymmetry of information, where you don't have the information. Between the buyer and seller, the information is not symmetric. For example, a milk cooperative buys milk from a ordinary, small, what do you call, farmer in a village. But there is a meter which can measure exactly and say that, hey, this milk has so much of fat, and so they will buy by fat. So there is no incentive for a farmer to put more water into it, right? So whereas this case, there is a asymmetry of information, which is the reason. And then there is something called adverse selection, which will say that, hey, this market will not work for me. Or the guy who's a lemon, whose car is not very good, he will say that, hey, I better go there. Similarly, you take a case of insurance. Okay. So two 40-year-old or a 30-year-old persons, when they come, there's hardly you can make out whose health is how much, right? Good or bad. They will do a couple of tests. But the thing is that it's unlikely that a buyer, always a guy who, the insurer will know more about his health. He might have a very rare disease, which the insurance person may not even know, cannot check, right? So what happens is eventually more people will tend to come for insurance. But whereas a healthy person feels, hey, this insurance is too expensive for me. Okay, so we might say it's not worth it. So all these questions will come up, because of which the adverse selection thing happens. And some people look for opportunistic behavior, saying that, hey, there is some way I can make more money, or by selling my car, which is not so good. So that's when opportunistic behavior comes, and eventually the market will fail for the cars, right? So coming to the handmade products, it's something very similar, where, see, on one hand, there is handlooms, and another hand, there is a mass produced imitation products. Okay. Handlooms, many a times, the designs are original, and colors are original, everything happens. But in mass production, what happens is, typically, they make one design and they create thousands of replicas. Now, the consumer, earlier, the market for handlooms used to be mostly local markets. Like, each village used to have their own weaver, and they used to buy. So there was no trust issues were there mostly. But now what has happened is, the whole handloom supply chain has kind of decoupled, where, there are multiple tiers. There is a wholesaler, there is a retailer, and all this stuff. Okay, each one has their own incentives. For example, for a handmade silk sari may cost 10,000 rupees. The same silk sari, if made in a power loom, it may cost 2,000-3,000 rupees cheaper. So, which is an incentive? It's an opportunity where, for somebody who's trying to sell, you will say that, and go to most of retailers today. You ask any sari, sir, is it handmade? Yes, it is handmade. It is 100% handmade, sir. So, in fact, one of the biggest master weaver in Banaras, he was saying, today, biggest of the retailers don't know whether it's a handmade or not. It's just that I have to tell them that it is handmade, only then they will believe. Okay, so such is the kind of scenario where this happens. So what happens when the cheap imitation product comes and the authentic product comes? The end consumer will not be able to know. Even, for example, we are working with one of the largest retailers and a big corporate house. And when we just called them up as a cold call, they said that, sir, we are looking for such solution for last 4 years. I asked him what happened. He said that, sir, because we go and we have hired very expensive consultants to tell us whether the product is genuine handmade or not, because we'll have to pay 2,000-3,000 rupees difference between this handloom and mass produced products. So, and we are struggling today with that problem. So, so even retailers, or some of these challenges are there, it's very difficult to increasingly. So, and in fact, one of the government agency recently came to us and said that, sir, there is a police case, FIR being filed against some suppliers to the tune of 1,000 crores. They have cheated a temple authority by saying they've been supplying machine made, saying that these products are handmade, produced in handmade fabrics, silk fabrics produced in a cooperative. So for 10 years, they have cheated to the extent of 1,000 crores. So it's a huge issue. So ultimately, what is happening is, for a genuine retailer, so if somebody wants to genuinely work with handlooms, the customer will come and say that, sir, the other shop is also selling at same silk sari, Kanchipuram sari or a Banaras sari at 6,000 rupees. Why are you selling at 10,000 rupees? So the question will come. So very difficult to justify, because he doesn't have a tool to say that, hey, mine is genuine and yours are not. Very similar to what used to happen in gold. Many years back, you used to go to the local gold player, and he was not able to, supply. Yeah, you are not sure what gold you are getting, right? Now we have a gold meter, so which has corrected the market very well. So similarly, this is happening for retailers as well as end consumers. Okay, so, and being said that, it's not that there are solutions. Okay, government, for example, has something called a handloom mark. Okay, they have something called craft mark. The other industries have got something called craft mark. So India handloom brand. These are where government spends hundreds of crores. However, what is the issue is that most of these are audit based. As you know, audit based means they will go once in a while and say that, hey, do you have looms? He will say, show some looms in the neighborhood and say that, sir, these are all looms I work with. Okay, so then they will say that, okay, these guys have got handlooms, and he can, we will give you labels, you can put it for any of the products. So after that, what happens is, he will show 100 handloom weavers, and he will be working with maybe one or two, and rest of the producers he produces from a power loom or a mass manufacturer, and he will put a handloom tag. So naturally, there is no incentive for a genuine handloom weavers to put this tag as well, because everybody is using this tag. So most of the audit based mechanisms are more of an eyewash rather than a genuine work, because, and also it depends on humans who are there. Ultimately, human being has incentive, right? So the guy who's, for example, selling a power loom fabric, he might say that, he might incentivize an officer and say that, hey, why don't you give me a certificate? He'll say that, yeah, it's an incentive. So it's a pricing pressure, opaque and unorganized supply, and unsatisfied consumer. Even consumers are not sure to pay high, because what if it is not a power handloom? How do I get guaranteed that it is a handloom? So even they buy something called handloom, genuine, there will also be in their mind, hey, is it really handloom? Have I paid too much otherwise? Because their neighbors, they will show, this is a Banarsi sari. Neighbor will say, hey, why did you go there? You could have got, say, 3,000 rupees cheaper here. Okay. Yeah, so this is what it is. So then with here, this was the challenge. So then we said that, this, and none of the foreigners or multinationals are going to solve this problem, because it's a very India specific problem, largely India specific problem. So then we said that, why can't we address this issue? And so we started with a vision to say that, hey, we want to transform this handmade sector into most trusted and respected brand globally. Anybody who says, hey, handmade, has to be handmade. Okay. So then, so with this, any questions so far before I move to technology piece of it? Okay. So then what happened is, we started looking for what are the solutions. Okay. And we found that, okay, technology could be a solution. When we spoke to many of the people who are into technology sector, so we found that, I think technology could be one enabler. So So what we have worked so far is that we have developed an IoT device which can be fitted to a handloom. Okay, so then what happens is how we differentiate between a mass produced and a handloom is most of these mass produced are done in a machine looms. Machine is done by driven by a motor, whereas a handmade products are produced using hand movements. So we then saw that an opportunity saying that, hey, this hand movement can be captured of a handloom, and then we can use this data in the difference in the movement, and we can use this what you call you can use technology to say that, hey, whether it's a handloom or not. So what we have developed so far is a technology called WeaveSense, where it's a motion of the each loom is captured. Okay, and the motion data is basically we use AI algorithms to basically classify whether something is a handloom or not. Okay, so this motion is being captured using an IoT device, which is fixed to a loom itself. Then another technology that we have done is say, okay, loom is fine, okay, but more important is product authenticity is important. So how do we say that product is authentic after it is produced? So then we came out with a technology where a barcode is being attached to a label on a fabric at the time of weaving. So this process is carried out at the time of weaving, where it's a unique process where the label is fixed to a fabric itself at the weaving stage. So this combination of those two technologies, WeaveSense and WeaveProtect, is something that we use it for authentication. Okay, so then we yeah, it's a tamper-proof, basically tamper-evident. So such a label cannot be rather attached to the fabric once the fabric is completely woven. Okay, so this is what we do. So let me show you a video and tell me if you can hear me well. 1 second, I'll share the video. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
So, okay, so that is how a brief about what the technology we use. So, like one is authenticity we spoke about, but being a decentralized sector, the handloom and craft sector has many challenges. Like the supply, there are too many layers in between. The supply chain is not transparent and effective. So there's so many other issues which are there, which one is it increases the cost, and also it increases the complexity. Like you will have to, somebody has to buy 100 meters, they have to send a person to a loom to check the quality, and they have to keep following up, saying that, hey, when are you sending it, because my customer is asking for the fabric. So there are many challenges being an unorganized and decentralized industry, which this sector faces. So as I told you, this the label is produced on the inserted on the fabric itself, which kind of gives a unique identity to the fabric. And this IoT device, which is fixed to the loom, and it goes to the cloud. The data goes to the cloud, and then there's a WeaveSense technology. We do a handloom fingerprinting, where classification happens, whether it's a genuine handloom or not. And then there is like and anyway the location is being authenticated, saying that where is it manufactured, and when is it manufactured, who has manufactured it, and what kind of design has he manufactured. So which kind of gives a multiple levels of check, and as well as it also gives an experience to the customer. Like a consumer can check this label and scan the label and see how, all the details. And similarly, a salesman can show that you can scan the fabric and see where has it come from. And then a seller or buyer can also share it in social media, saying that yeah, this is the product, I bought it, and then it's woven by a X number of people. So so as a platform, right? Though this IoT is a kind of device, it's an overall platform what we does. And this platform can, one thing is, it is going to digitalize each and every product, so that the product is traced, measured, which can, digitalization, as can help in many ways, which is all being done here. So then authentication is whether it's genuine or not. It's a very important question. The third one is supply chain management, where you know that, hey, how many products are produced. For example, you give an order for 100 saris. So what is the status of 100 saris? Are they on loom? Have they completed production? Or what is the exact status, right? So, and then you have traceability. Like, somebody like a overseas customer might want to know that, hey, where does it come from? Okay, so how did it move? Say, for example, it moved from a weaver X to a what do you call that? It went to a wholesaler, then it went to a garmenter. So then it moved to a distributor warehouse. So they can trace the entire chain of the where it has come from. The next aspect is it can also help in consumer insight, because consumer is scanning the label. So one is that where is he scanning? What kind of products has he bought? So then he can also, is there a way the consumer can also interact with the weaver? So these possibilities keep opening up. And then branding. So when consumer scans this, what content are you going to show it to the consumer? How are you going to increase the brand of your weaver, your artisan, or your retailer, as you are as a retailer? So your social credentials, environmental credentials. So it gives us an opportunity, gives opportunity to brand themselves. And then consumer connect, as I told you. Can you, for example, somebody's bought a sari. How can he kind of book a return? Okay. So, or how can he connect, say that if he wants to give a feedback saying that, hey, this color is bad, or this is shrinking a lot. Once you buy from any of the places, it becomes very difficult. So then what happens is, here you have at home, you find that, hey, color is, what do you call that, bleeding. So then you scan the label and say that, go to the feedback tab and say that this color is bleeding. I'll give you 1 star for this. So that, as a credibility of the entire sector, and your own credibility as a retailer will increase with this. Okay, so that is what. And then more important thing is, since there is a device which keep measuring the activity, as you know that this carbon credits, right? Because a handloom, I mean, a back of the envelope calculation shows that machine made, they consume a lot of power to produce the same fabric, right? Whereas handloom, it doesn't cover fabric. So, and where does this power come from? Largely comes from non-renewable sources, be mostly coal. So that means that there is greenhouse gas emission when every machine-made product is being produced. So on the other hand, the handmade products are sequestering that.
Sir, actually, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir. I can't hear you. Yes, sir. Can you ask question?
Sir, Mr. Vijay, Shankar here.
Yes, Shankar.
Sir, that I mean, in the video, that Weave Protect, is that woven into the fabric? Like, did that video show
So
that?
it's a label. Okay, let me show you.
Sorry.
See, the label has a threads. Basically, the threads will be used to kind of, it's basically integrated. Thread is integrated with the label.
Oh, okay.
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 So we have these, I mean, of course, more than 2 technologies. So some of these we have developed in-house, and we have also patented these technologies. Yeah. So I think someone else had a question. Okay. Yeah, Solapur and Ichalkaranji in Maharashtra. Yeah. And there is a credit, definitely, I think credit problem, poor infrastructure. So all of these are, I think, are the result, I would say, poor wages are a result of market failure is what we see. Okay, so if market is efficiently performing, then everybody is making enough money, and there is reinvestment happens. But in this case, it's unfortunately that's not the case. So so I will just end this slide, and then as you know, with respect to carbon credits, so a lot of these carbon credits are being traded. Like for example, a company like Tesla, which is an electric car company, they have got around $1 billion. They just made out of the carbon credits. More than, I mean, it's a policy, government policy, carbon offsetting policy, because of which they have earned $1 billion, which is one of the largest within their balance sheet. It's a significant amount. So while an electric car makes carbon credits, or a 5-star hotel makes carbon credit, they kind of it's being, carbon credits are being sold, and they kind of earn out of carbon credits. Whereas handloom weaver, cannot do that today, because there is, first thing is, there is no method to measure it, and there is no scale. Individual weaver cannot go to and do that work. So I mean, what we estimate is that at least every year a weaver can do roughly a ton of carbon dioxide is sequestering by weaving in a handloom instead of machine made. So now that needs to be supported, because environmentally today, that we just had this climate talks in Glasgow, where it's a 1.5 degrees we have to reduce, right? So unfortunately, there is nothing significant happening. Whereas on one hand, there is a guy who is trying to help sequester this, and he is not being incentivized. So I feel that it is a win-win situation for everyone, both for the world as well as handloom weaver, if the market works very efficiently. Okay, so I would like to stop here and ask if there are any questions. Okay, so on the technology part, or this one, so any suggestions that you have, or any ideas that it came to mind? We was very hopeful that it'll be very interactive in this case. Any questions? Okay, so I think we will have a earlier, quicker lunch break maybe. So this is about the technology, how it can help both the entire ecosystem. So what we intend is also focused on is that an individual weaver, can he operate this, right? It's a easy, like somebody like with the way you wear a watch. Similarly, the IoT device is kind of attached to a loom, so it becomes very easier. Okay, and next is it's a simple way. What we have focused on is a simple functional solution, like a one-click button, right? We don't want it to be a app with a lot of text and all the stuff. It's an app with a simple button. You click a button, scan the label. That's all. So rest everything the system takes care. And we also do this with a unique label. Means if you produce 100 sarees will have a unique label. So none of the labels. Hello?
Slides are not visible, sir. Slides are not visible.
Slides are not visible. Okay. So you can see, sir, now?
Not visible.
Slides are still not visible, my screen?
Yeah.
No, sir. Slides are not visible.
Oh, okay. I think nothing has changed so far. So, let me try once more. Entire screen or window. You can see my screen now? Now you can see, ma'am?
Only your screen is seen, but the slides are not visible, sir.
Oh, okay.
Sir, you need to minimize the screen, sir, and then you need to switch on that PPT.
Oh, okay. Minimize the browser, is it?
We are seeing your Teams screen.
Can you see now? One second. Can you see mine now? So it's still there, issue?
Or maybe you can try, sir. You can stop the sharing.
Yeah. I did 3 times.
Okay.
I did the stop sharing. Anyway, so the slides, key slides are already covered. Here it's more of a benefits and this, I'm talking about. So what we have seen is that, a unique label, so that, anybody imitating labels and all this stuff, you will be able to know centrally. And next is that we do authentication based on the real-time data rather than the a traditional audit-based or any other mechanisms. And a lot of there are blockchain-based and all this stuff is there where it still goes for a user has to authenticate saying that, hey, my fabric is handmade. That itself is a challenge, because most of the now what is happening is every handloom weaver will have few power looms as well. Most of the handloom weavers, not weavers really, at least master weaver, while he is working with say 10 handlooms, he will also have 50 power looms. So it's very difficult to trust, by just word of mouth saying that my fabric is handmade, though he might have handlooms. So so what we do is a real-time authentication. And even if some some issue is there, in terms of signal, so we'll get to know because the data is stored in the cloud and it's verifiable. Anybody can say that anytime, hey, how are you doing it? Can you? We need to verify it. It's possible. So there is a trail left. Even after the fabric is produced, the signature is left. And we use basic smartphone because now smartphone is becoming accessible and most people have it. In fact, we have found that most handloom weavers, they also have, if not handloom, weaver doesn't have to have it. At least somebody who his customer needs to have it locally. Neighbor, anybody, because it's not used every day, or it's like once in a fabric for once, it will be used. And then it can be traced all through the value chain, from raw material to value added services till the consumer, you can trace it. Okay. So, and more importantly, if you see now, increasingly the mobile penetration has increased. More important, internet penetration has increased significantly in the last 5 to 6 years. So now most villages we go, there is some mechanism, though ours is a kind of, it works with a offline also mode. It works. It's not that, device should have an internet connectivity. It works offline as well. So which gives a lot of flexibility. And then why now the technology is accessible, and it's a matter of time. Even government will give mobiles for everyone, right, in a short span of time. Already laptops are being given. So, and then counterfeit is a kind of new normal, means it's a kind of accepted. Even the biggest brands, they say, in fact, when we initially, before this, we wanted to work on the products, we met a marketplace and I told him, sir, I want to do this handmade products, stores. How do you see and all this stuff? He said one thing, see, if you want to really make money, you make products which will look like handmade, but don't do handmade at all. So because there is no money there. So this is the kind of norm which is there, where people say that they use the handmade name and they'll make more money rather than selling genuine handmade product. Okay, and the consumers are also now more aware. They want more sustainable products. They want creative originality, and not just in India, by the way. Globally, if you see, people are fed up with, like, somebody like a Walmart had huge amount of money. Okay, and they wanted to literally monopolize the fashion industry, but they could never do it. They could never do it, and they could never make fashion as a proportionately significant business. So why? Because the people love creative originality, they love social good, they like sustainability, and people generally, in fact, one A.T. Kearney had done a research where people were asked, if I say that this product is made by a rural artisan, are you willing to pay more money? Or it is helping society in some way, are you willing to pay more money? And in India also, people are very sensitive. They said that 80% of the people said, yeah, I will definitely pay more money. Okay, so I feel that it's a time that the consumers are ready. Accessibility is technology, and handmade products have to be luxury. They cannot be poor, cheap, lack of quality, that like, they call it a suti kapda, right? Wherein it's not seen as a good quality product, right? So whereas that whole thing concept has to change, wherein, the handmade has to be a luxury product, because it's luxury, because it is made by hand, it's very personal product, it is environmental friendly, everything, right? So I feel that, we might drive an electric car, but I think we need to wear a handloom product, which would make much more sense to the planet. So, and then with this technology, what happens is there is a consumer trust. The moment consumer trust happens, saying that, hey, I'm buying a real gold, okay, then he will not think twice, right, in investing. So he says that he'll go confidently. Similarly, if somebody product, I'm confidently I can buy. And it's not just this, okay, even organic foods today, everybody claims organic food, but consumers, it's very difficult to say that, hey, whether my vegetable is organic, my honey is organic. So too many questions. Well, especially when big brands, as you know, that Honeygate scheme happened, even the bigger brands kind of, they take it for granted. And they say that, they'll hide behind the brand and try to cheat customer. So it's a matter of increasing consumer trust, and you can engage more with the customer, saying that tomorrow, say customer feels, say, I like this product, it has come very durable, and I want to do something for the weaver. There is a channel that we can. And in our whole thing, we have seen that the artisan pride is kind of is very important. Okay, let me. So typically, when we travel to the cluster, they say that no one will give a bride to a weaver. Okay, so none of the second generation wants to do weaving, because nobody gives. If I'm a weaver, I think nobody comes forward saying that, who will give bride to you, because they are supposed to be poor. Okay, they are not supposed to be economically sustainable, and there is lack of pride in that work. Weaving was a very pride work earlier, which used to happen. Unfortunately, now that pride has over the years has reduced. One is there is no economic people. It's not an economically sustainable profession, poorly paid. So there is no pride because of that. And then, people don't recognize, don't respect a weaver in the society nearby. So the way software engineer today is recognized, it's unfortunate that, weavers are not recognized. So it's important that, this artisan pride is kind of, you give back the pride to the artisan. And more important is that, today scaling up economic handloom business is very difficult, because management is a tough thing. In fact, one of the biggest brand, which is 1,000 crore brand, when I went and spoke to them saying that, hey, you are doing so much of handloom, he said that we don't care anymore, sir. If we had wanted to do only handloom product, we couldn't have made 100,000 crore business. Okay, so now we don't care now, but our products will look like handmade, but they're not. Okay, that is the issue, that when you have this scalable business, and like the way today, if you see Colombian coffee, it commands a premium. Okay, it's not that their seeds are far more superior or all that stuff. Darjeeling tea commands premium. Okay, why? Because there is a sense of authenticity. Like, for example, Darjeeling tea, if anyone they have globally lawyers across the globe. If anybody sells any other tea as Darjeeling tea, they will be dragged to the court. So that brand is maintained. Okay, if you like, for example, Louis Vuitton is a big luxury manufacturer. Can you believe their annual budget for legal is $1 billion? 7,000 crores plus they spend on legal challenges, because there is so much of fake Louis Vuittons being sold. Okay, and they have in-house 60 lawyers in their office sitting and every day filing cases. Okay, so this is the extent today, especially with the online businesses, the fake products, imitation products has significantly increased. Okay, apparently there are 4,000 stores fake stores which are selling Nike shoes. Okay, 4,000 stores online. Okay, so to that extent, there is an issue of counterfeiting which is happening. And so is handloom. So unless you have a mechanism which can say that, hey, something is genuine, there is no hope. And I am telling you, in next 10 years, the handlooms will completely collapse. There will be no weavers because the existing generation already in their 50s and 60s, and they won't be able to weave after 4 or 5 years. And next generation is not going to come. So the whole sector will be vanished now if we don't take any credible action. Okay. So yeah. So and since with my journey, my colleagues, co-founders are there. One is Mr. Ramki Kodipadi. He is he was a vice president in Infosys and has worked in technology sector for about 2 decades. And another person is Vishal Chaudhary. He is a NIFT graduate, and he has also worked in multi-channel multinational in fashion business for about 15 years before we kind of joined hands together to develop this. I feel that the time has come where we are a technology hub. I didn't understand technology, any of this, a year back. Even now, I don't understand. But I feel that technology, more trust. I have more trust on the technology. And if we mobilize people and like government, for example, it's not possible that one startup does everything. It has to happen from the government side. It has to happen from many multinationals who does CSR work. So all of this combine and make a resolution saying that, hey, I'm going to work on this. I think it can be a huge boost. For example, you have Amul as a case study, right? It's not that all many countries this has been successful. So even in many states today, private dairies dominate. So whereas somewhere community, some models of this milk federation, milk cooperatives have succeeded. So I feel that we need to build such a case study and for every sector, not just handmade.